The night I got thrown out on Christmas Eve, and a barefoot woman changed everything. Christmas lights look different when you're the one left outside. From the sidewalk, my son's house looked like a magazine cover, warm windows, soft gold twinkle lights wrapped around the porch rails, a perfect wreath centered on the front door, like the kind you buy when you want strangers to believe you have a perfect life. Inside, I could hear laughter and the faint jingle of a holiday playlist. That sound, muffled joy behind glass, has a way of making the cold feel colder. Outside, I stood on the porch with my hands curled into fists, trying not to shake, not just from the wind, from the humiliation. My name is Eugene Parker. I'm 68 years old, a retired union electrician. I spent 40 years crawling through attics and basements, wiring hospitals, schools, and fire stations, buildings where people's lives depend on everything working when it matters. I've worked in blizzards, heat waves, and storms that knocked power out across half the state. I thought I understood cold, but nothing I'd ever felt compared to the cold of being told you don't belong by the child you raised. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read them, and I promise you're going to want to stay for what happens next. Because the worst betrayals don't feel like knives. They feel like handshakes. And on that Christmas Eve, my son offered me a handshake that took everything. It started with paperwork. Earlier that afternoon, Caleb spoke like he was asking me to pass the salt. "Dad," he said, calm and careful the tone you use when you don't want someone to get emotional. "Can we take care of something quick before dinner?" I'd been living in his guest room in Newton, Massachusetts, for 11 months. My wife, Martha, died 2 years ago. After she passed, our old home felt like an echo. I'd walk from room to room and hear silence bouncing off the walls. My coffee tasted like grief. Nights felt endless, like darkness had learned my schedule. Caleb was the one who called. "Dad, come stay with us," he said. "It'll be good for the kids. Addie and Ben love you, and it'll be good for you." He made it sound like love, like family, and I wanted to believe him. Because loneliness makes you hungry for anything warm, especially when you're old enough to know time is not infinite. So I sold the house, packed my tools, folded Martha's sweaters into boxes I couldn't open without my throat tightening, moved into the room down the hall from my grandkids like a man trying to become useful again. At first, it felt good. Addie would run into my room after school and shove crafts into my hands like they were treasures. Ben would bring me broken toy cars and whisper like it was classified. "Can you fix it?" I always could. A screw here, a battery there. Patience. Calm. Martha used to say, "You don't just fix things, Gene. You make people feel safe." I didn't realize safe can look like easy to the wrong kind of people. Because slowly, Sloane, Caleb's wife, began rewriting the rules of the house. Not loudly, not all at once, quietly. My coffee mug in the sink became a problem. My pill organizer on the counter became concerning. My habit of walking the neighborhood became unsafe. Then one day she smiled too brightly and said, "We should get everything organized." Organized. That word should have warned me. Because organized didn't mean helping me. It meant controlling me. That afternoon, Caleb led me into his home office. Dark wood desk, a little shelf of business books he probably hadn't read, framed photos of the family smiling like proof they were good people. Sloane was already there, perched on the arm of a leather chair like she owned the air. And in the corner sat a man in a gray suit with a briefcase open and a polite smile that never reached his eyes. "This is Mr. Halpern," Caleb said. "Our attorney." My stomach tightened. "Attorney? For what?" Caleb held up a folder. "Estate planning. Just making sure things are clear." Sloane nodded with a soft, practiced sympathy. "It's for the children, Eugene. We're protecting their future." Protecting. That word hit a soft place in me. After Martha died, the only thing that felt permanent was my bond with Addie and Ben. Addie's small hand in mine crossing the street. Ben's grin when I fixed something, the way they said Grandpa like it meant I still mattered. Caleb slid papers across the desk. "It's straightforward," he said. "Since you've been living here, it makes sense to consolidate. Transfer the proceeds from your house sale into a family vehicle. Adjust your pension beneficiary. Standard. It's basically a trust." I stared down at the first page. Legal language. Big words. Small print. "Why now?" I asked. Caleb exhaled like I was being difficult. Because it's time, Dad, and because we've been helping you. We need structure. Structure. Another harmless word until it's used like a weapon. Mr. Halpern cleared his throat. Mr. Parker, these documents simplify administration and avoid complications later. I looked at Caleb, my boy, the kid I taught to ride a bike, the kid who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. You're sure this helps Addie and Ben? I asked. Sloane's smile tightened. Of course. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't think about their future? Loneliness makes you easy. Grief makes you soft. And I was tired of feeling like a burden, tired of waking up and realizing no one needed me the way Martha used to. So when Caleb pushed a pen toward me, I picked it up. I signed where they pointed. One page, then another. I didn't notice the line about power of attorney. I didn't notice transfer of ownership. I didn't notice the quiet language that removed my name from everything I'd worked 40 years to build. Because I was thinking about two little kids upstairs, wrapped in pajamas, believing Grandpa was safe. That's the thing about traps. They always look like a good deed from the inside. A perfect house with a rotten heart. By sunset, the house looked like a holiday postcard. A huge tree shimmered in the living room. Stockings hung in perfect symmetry. The smell of ham and cloves filled the air. Any stranger would have thought this home was the definition of warmth. But perfection has a cold edge when it's fake. At the long dining table, Caleb sat at the head. Sloane sat beside him, posture straight, eyes sharp. Addie and Ben had been sent to bed early, Sloane said, because they were too excited. I understood immediately. No witnesses. I tried to talk about the kids, about school projects and Little League and the normal stuff that still made me feel useful. Caleb answered in one-word replies. Sloane didn't answer at all. She pushed food around her plate like she was bored by the idea of me existing. The entire time, Caleb kept checking his watch like he was waiting for an appointment. At exactly 9, he pushed his chair back. The scrape sounded too loud in the silence. We need to talk, he said. The tone wasn't family. It was business. He walked into the living room. I followed. Sloane followed last, already holding her phone upright like she was ready to record a punchline. Caleb stopped by the front door. You need to leave, he said. I blinked. Leave? Caleb, what are you talking about? He didn't look at me when he answered. The house is ours now. The accounts are ours. Your pension goes to us. My brain rejected the words like a bad connection. No, that's not I signed for the kids. You said it was a trust. Sloane laughed. Not a giggle. A laugh like someone enjoying the sound of something breaking. There's no trust, Caleb said, voice flat. There's just you, and you not living here anymore. The room tilted. Please, I whispered. It's freezing out. At least let me get my clothes. Caleb moved slightly, blocking the stairs like a bouncer. Nothing upstairs is yours. You signed it away. Sloane lifted her phone higher. Say it again, she urged, delighted. Say you don't have anywhere to go. My hands started shaking so hard I couldn't hide it. Can I at least say goodbye to Addie and Ben? I asked. Sloane lowered the phone just a fraction. Her eyes glittered. They'll forget you, she said. Kids forget old people fast. That sentence so small hit me like a boot to the chest. Caleb turned the knob and opened the door. Cold air rushed in like a slap. Go, he said. So I stepped onto the porch. The door shut. The deadbolt clicked. And I stood there with a thin coat, a plastic pharmacy bag of meds, and the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heart breaking. Family. Reduced to a deadbolt. The night doesn't care. It's Christmas. The street was quiet, blanketed in fresh snow that made everything look soft until you realized how hard it was underneath. I started walking because standing still made the cold climb into my bones. My phone was gone, for safekeeping. Sloane had said weeks earlier after claiming I was forgetful. My wallet had disappeared from my dresser drawer 2 days before. I told myself it was a mistake. I told myself not to accuse anyone because I didn't want tension in the house. Now I understood. It wasn't a mistake. It was preparation. My breath came out in ragged clouds. My fingers went numb within minutes. I kept the pharmacy bag tucked under my arm like it was the last proof I existed. Every house I passed glowed with warm light. Through windows, I saw families around trees, kids in matching pajamas, couples clinking glasses. And with every step, something inside me cracked wider. Martha used to rub my neck after long shifts and whisper, "You're too good, Jean. Don't let the world take that from you." But the world wasn't the one taking from me. My own son was. I drifted toward Cold Spring Park without meaning to pond. Benches half buried in snow. A street lamp flickering overhead like it couldn't decide if it wanted to work. I sat on an iron bench and felt the cold punch through my pants instantly. For a moment, the simplest thought arrived. I could close my eyes and not open them again. No more humiliation. No more begging. No more pretending. Then I heard Martha in my head clear as the day she died. Don't you dare quit. I wiped my face with a shaking hand and told myself to stand. That's when I saw her, the barefoot woman. When you think you've hit rock bottom, sometimes you meet someone who's already digging. She shuffled toward the bench like every step hurt. At first I thought she'd lost shoes by accident, but when she came closer, I saw both feet were bare. Purple, swollen, skin turning that pale gray white that screams frostbite. She wore a thin, wrinkled dress and a ragged scarf. Her hair was silver and tangled, hanging in wet strings. She stopped a few feet away and swayed slightly like she might fall. "Excuse me," she rasped. "Do you know if any shelter is still open?" Her voice carried the rough edge of someone who hasn't slept warm in a long time. I stared at her feet, and shame hit me so hard it made me dizzy. Here I was, thinking I'd lost everything, but I still had shoes. "I don't know," I said. I don't have anywhere either." She lowered herself onto the far end of the bench. We sat in silence, breathing in the cold. My body was shaking, but her shaking was worse, violent. Full-body tremors like her muscles were fighting for survival. Something inside me moved. Not heroism, just instinct. You see someone colder than you, you share your warmth. I unbuttoned my coat with numb fingers. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm old wool, broken-in sleeves. Martha used to tease me for refusing to buy a new one. I stepped toward her and draped my coat over her shoulders. "Here," I said. "Take this." She gasped like I'd handed her gold. Her hands clutched the fabric and pulled it tight. She closed her eyes and breathed like she could finally inhale. "What's your name?" she whispered. "Eugene," I said. "Eugene Parker." She nodded slowly. "You can call me Dahlia." "Where will you go tonight?" she asked. I laughed once bitter and small. "I don't know." She studied my face like she was reading something invisible. Then she stood steadier than she should have been and said, "Wait here." I blinked. "What?" "10 minutes," she said. "Can you do that?" Before I could answer, she turned and disappeared into the dark beyond the street lamp. If you're still with me, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there, because what happened next still feels impossible to me. 10 minutes that rewrote my life. I waited because sometimes hope is the only thing you can still choose. The cold chewed at my ears. My hands felt like wood. I told myself she wasn't coming back. Why would she? I'd given her warmth. She'd go find shelter. She owed me nothing. But something in her eyes had held more strength than her body did. So I waited. I counted seconds to keep my mind from collapsing. Around 7 minutes, I heard an engine. Then another. Headlights cut through the falling snow. A black SUV rolled into view, slow and silent. Then another behind it. Then another. They lined up along the curb like a motorcade. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The middle SUV's door opened, and a woman stepped out. It was her. Same face. Same sharp eyes. But transformed so completely my brain refused to connect the two images. She wore a long, cream-colored coat, tailored to perfection. Her silver hair was pulled into a smooth twist. Diamond studs winked in the streetlight. Her boots were polished leather. 2 men in dark suits moved with her, scanning the area like they'd done it 1,000 times. She walked toward me with steady confidence. "Mr. Parker," she said. My throat tightened. "Dahlia?" She smiled gently. "My name is Dahlia Kensington." One of the men behind her carried my coat, folded neatly dry now, as if it had never touched snow. "My coat. You gave me this," she said softly, "when it was the only warm thing you had left." My hands trembled as I took it. "How?" I started. She raised a hand. "Let me explain." And in that moment, standing under a flickering street lamp, I realized the universe hadn't just tested me. It had watched me. Why she did it. Dahlia's eyes stayed on mine, steady, unblinking. "For 23 years, she said, "I've spent Christmas Eve doing the same thing." She paused, letting the words settle. "I leave my home alone. No phone, no money, no protection, dressed like someone who has nothing. My stomach flipped. Why? Because I needed to know if kindness still exists when nobody is watching, she said quietly. Then her voice sharpened into something else. I run a foundation, she continued. We deal with elder exploitation, coercion, financial abuse. Paperwork is only half the battle. The other half is character. I swallowed hard. So, you were testing me? Yes, she said. And you passed. I shook my head. I didn't do anything special. I just your feet. Most people look away, she said, not cruelly tiredly. Some pretend they don't hear. Some tell themselves it's not their responsibility. She stepped closer, and beneath her polish, I saw something else. Pain. Old pain. You gave away warmth when you thought you might not survive the night, she said. That is rare. I thought of Caleb's blank face, Sloane's laugh, the deadbolt. I don't understand, I whispered. Why does this matter to you? Dahlia's gaze flickered. Because once, she said, voice lower, my family did the same thing to me. She exhaled slowly. I was 19, pregnant, unwanted, thrown out in winter with nothing. A stranger helped me when no one else would. She held my gaze. I never forgot what that felt like. Then her tone turned firm. I need people who understand betrayal, she said. Not just sympathy. Understanding. Someone who can sit with victims and not look away. My heart pounded. What are you saying? She opened the SUV door. Warm light spilled onto the snow. I'm saying come with me tonight, she replied. And if you choose, come work with me after. We'll make sure no one can do to you what your son did. Warmth feels like a miracle when you've been frozen by the people you trusted. I climbed into the SUV like a man stepping into a second life. The warmth that hurt. Inside, the air was heated and smelled faintly of leather and peppermint. My fingers tingled painfully as circulation returned. I hadn't realized how close I was to hypothermia until warmth made my body ache. Dahlia handed me water and a small blanket. Drink, she said. Slowly. Where are we going? I asked. To my residence, she said. A guest suite is prepared. I stared out the window as the park faded behind us. Snow fell steady, like the world was trying to cover up what had happened. A thought nagged me. If I hadn't given my coat away, would she have come back? It bothered me, because I didn't give it expecting anything. And yet here I was being saved. What I signed, I said, voice cracking. Can it be undone? Dahlia's eyes sharpened. It depends, she said. But coercion leaves footprints, Eugene. And I have people who know exactly how to find them. My new life began with work, not luck. Dahlia's home wasn't a house. It was an estate, quiet gates, long driveway, trees wrapped in tasteful white lights. A housekeeper greeted me as if I belonged there. In the guest suite, there was a bed made with thick blankets, a bathroom with fluffy towels, and a small plate of cookies under a glass dome like a hotel. I stood there stunned, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Dahlia hovered in the doorway. Rest, she said. Tomorrow we talk. The next morning, her assistant drove me to a brownstone office in Boston's Back Bay. A gold plaque read, Kensington, Elder Protection Initiative. Inside, Dahlia's general counsel, Cynthia Lowe, handed me a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. Case files, she said. Elder coercion, financial exploitation. Read them. All of them? I asked. Her mouth twitched. If you want to understand your own story, yes. That's how my new life began. Not with a lottery ticket, with homework. I read stories that sounded like mine in 100 different voices. Parents pressured into signing deeds. Widows convinced they were helping, then abandoned when the money was gone. Men like me who trusted because they were afraid of dying alone. And every case followed the same pattern. Control, isolation, paperwork, theft. One evening, Dahlia sat across from me after the staff left. City lights blinked outside the window. Money doesn't heal betrayal, she said. It just changes the temperature. So what heals it? I asked. Structure, she said. Protection, accountability. I swallowed. What Caleb did. Does it have a name? Her eyes hardened. Undue influence, she said. Possibly fraud. Elder financial exploitation. Hearing the words made my pain feel like something real, not just something I was ashamed to admit. So I can fight it? I asked. You can, she said, but only if you're willing to face what that means. What does it mean? It means your son won't be able to hide behind the word family anymore. If this story is hitting you somewhere personal, take a second to hit like. It tells YouTube to share this with anyone who might need it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. You never know who's listening quietly, needing a reminder they're not alone. While I learned, Caleb spent, I didn't stalk them. I didn't drive past the house. I didn't want to see the place where I'd been erased. But in a town like Newton, news travels. A neighbor squinted at me in a grocery store like she wasn't sure she was seeing a ghost. Jean? I thought you moved to Florida. Something like that, I said. She leaned in. Your son's been living large. New SUV. Kitchen renovation. Heard they're planning a pool. At night, numbers ran through my head like a cruel math problem. My house sale had been just over $700,000. My pension wasn't huge, but it was steady. Social security. Savings. That money was supposed to last me the rest of my life. Caleb was burning it like kindling. Dahlia's forensic accountant, Elliot Marsh, tracked it all. Charts, categories, dates, luxury car payments, home renovations, international travel, cash withdrawals, failed crypto trades. It's not sustainable, Elliot said calmly. They're moving fast. Why? I asked. Because people who steal like this don't feel safe, he said. They spend to convince themselves they deserve it. Carelessness leaves evidence, and evidence becomes leverage. Dahlia built a moment. I wanted to run to court immediately. I wanted to kick in the door and demand my name back, but Dahlia stopped me. Right now, they're comfortable, she said. Comfortable people deny. They paint you as unstable, confused. They use your age as a weapon. So what do? I asked. We wait until the truth becomes unavoidable, she said. How? Undiscreet. We build a case, and we build a moment. She trained me not just in paperwork, but in how to speak about it. I testified at a small committee hearing without naming Caleb. I partnered with advocacy groups. I learned every red flag I ignored. Sloan organizing my documents. Sloan managing my medications. Sloan calling me forgetful in front of others, planting doubt like seeds. And me accepting it because I wanted peace. One day, Cynthia dropped a folder on my desk. We have enough to challenge the transfer, she said. But Dahlia wants something bigger. What? I asked. Public accountability, Cynthia replied. Not to humiliate, to prevent them from doing it again. That's when I understood. Dahlia's foundation wasn't just charity. It was a courtroom with better lighting. A year after the bench, Dahlia promoted me. Director of Outreach, she said, sliding a business card across the desk. I laughed. Dahlia, I'm a retired electrician. She smiled. You're a survivor, and you listen. Most people talk too much. Purpose changed how I stood, and it changed what I believed about myself. I stopped seeing myself as discarded. I started seeing myself as someone who could stand up again. Then Elliot's latest report arrived. Caleb and Sloan had burned through nearly everything. Home equity loan, maxed credit cards, a crypto gamble that collapsed. They're cornered, Dahlia said. I stared at the numbers. So, now? Dahlia held my gaze. Now we choose the right stage. The stage where lies couldn't whisper. The invitation went out on heavy paper with gold lettering. A private donor education panel on family legacy planning. Caleb RSVP'd within an hour. Desperation makes people predictable. Dahlia reserved a ballroom at a country club overlooking the water. She invited legislators, journalists, philanthropists, people who understood consequences. Cynthia prepared the legal package. Isolation tactics, missing wallet, misleading language, no independent counsel. Elliot prepared the financial trail. Every dollar, every purchase, every withdrawal. Dahlia prepared the room. And she gave me one job. Tell the truth, she said. What if I freeze? I asked. You won't, she said. You already survived the coldest part. If you've made it this far, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know who's sitting up late with this story and who might need the ending. The country club glittered. Chandeliers, white tablecloths, champagne flutes catching light, a string quartet playing soft carols. Banners along the walls read, The Kensington Elder Protection Initiative. Protecting dignity. Preventing exploitation. 300 guests. The room smelled like perfume and money. I stood near the stage in a tailored suit, a lantern pin on my lapel. Dahlia gave it to me the night before. A reminder, she'd said. At 7:18 p.m., the doors opened. Caleb walked in. He looked thinner than I remembered. His tux didn't fit right, rented last minute. Sloane clung to him in a red gown that screamed expensive but whispered credit card debt. They scanned the room like hunters looking for prey. They didn't see me at first. At 7:25, Dahlia stepped to the podium. Applause rolled through the ballroom. She spoke about elder exploitation, how it hides behind family language, how shame keeps victims silent. Then she paused. "Tonight," she said, "I want to introduce someone who represents exactly why we are here." She turned toward me. "Please welcome our Director of Outreach, Eugene Parker." Applause began before I moved, and that's when Caleb heard my name. His head snapped up. Confusion, then recognition. His skin went pale. Sloane followed his gaze and saw me. Her expression collapsed into fear mixed with rage, the look of someone realizing the lights just turned on. I walked to the podium and gripped the microphone. 300 faces. Cameras. Witnesses. And in the fourth row, my son watching like he'd seen a ghost. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Eugene Parker." I let the silence sharpen. And 20 months ago, my son threw me out into the freezing night on Christmas Eve. The room went still. Even the quartet stopped. And I hadn't even started. Truth. In front of witnesses. I told them everything. Not with screams. Not with insults. With facts. The office. The attorney. The trust. The pen in my hand. The way I wanted to believe. The dinner. The kids sent upstairs. The porch. The deadbolt. Then I told them about the park. The bench. The barefoot woman. Elliot clicked a remote. The screen behind me lit up with spreadsheets, dates, amounts, categories. 600,000 in spending. Luxury car payments, home renovations, international travel, cash withdrawals, failed crypto trades. Gasps rippled through the room. "I worked 40 years," I said quietly. "I wired hospitals, schools, fire stations. I skipped vacations so my family could be safe." I looked directly at Caleb. My son spent it like it was found money. Cynthia stepped up. "The transfer documents show indicators of undue influence," she said crisply. "Lack of independent counsel, misleading statements, isolation tactics. Under Massachusetts law, this may constitute elder financial exploitation." Caleb's hands shook. Sloane stared at the floor like if she didn't look up, reality might not see her. I returned to the microphone. "I'm not here to destroy my son," I said. "I'm here to stop him from doing this again to me, or to anyone else." Cynthia placed 2 folders near Caleb's seat. "2 options," she said calmly. Option A, criminal investigation and civil litigation. Option B, restitution, return the home, repay the money on a structured plan, and allow Eugene Parker access to his grandchildren. The room held its breath. Caleb reached for the pen like it weighed 100 pounds, and he signed. No cheering, no shouting. The power was in the restraint. This wasn't entertainment. This was consequences. Sloane didn't sign. She sat rigid, eyes glassy, as if her world was collapsing in public. Cynthia collected the documents. I stepped back to the microphone. "This foundation exists," I said, "so no one else has to sit on a frozen bench wondering if their family ever loved them." I scanned the room. Kindness should not be punished, and cruelty should not be rewarded. Applause started slowly, one person, then another, then a wave. People stood. Caleb and Sloane slipped toward the exit. No one stopped them. They were leaving with something heavier than shame. They were leaving with accountability. If you're still here and this story meant something to you, hit like. It helps more than you think. And if you want more stories that remind people they still matter, subscribe. You might be the reason someone doesn't give up on a cold night. The real ending isn't revenge. It's getting your life back. A year later, I stood in that same ballroom again, not to expose anyone, but to celebrate. The Kensington Elder Protection Initiative had recovered millions for families. New laws were being introduced. People who thought they were powerless learned they weren't. Caleb repaid steadily. 2 jobs. Counseling. Humility carved into him by reality. No excuses. No speeches. And I saw Addie and Ben twice a month. The first visits were supervised and careful. Like everyone was afraid one wrong word would shatter what we were rebuilding. But kids have an honesty adults forget. One afternoon, Addie slipped her hand into mine at the park and said, "I missed you, Grandpa." It broke me open in the best way. After an anniversary event, Caleb approached me near the coat check. He looked older, thinner, realer. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly. I want you to know I'm trying." I held his gaze and saw the boy he used to be, buried under the man he chose to become. "I know," I said. "Keep going." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But we didn't run either. The next day, I drove back to Cold Spring Park, alone. The bench was still there. The pond was calm. The air was warm. I sat down and remembered the deadbolt, the cold, the coat I gave away. And I finally understood what I couldn't understand that night. Kindness isn't a transaction. It's a signal, a flare shot into the dark that says, "I'm still human." And sometimes, just sometimes, someone sees it. That evening, Dahlia invited me into her library. "I'm stepping back," she said, pouring tea. "I want you to take the role of president." I stared at her. "Dahlia," she raised a hand. "You remember what it's like to be thrown away," she said. "That's why you'll protect people better than I ever could." She handed me a small box. Inside was my old coat, clean, preserved, folded carefully. And tucked inside the pocket was the lantern pin. I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, the warmth in my chest didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. Because the truth is simple. Family isn't blood. Family is who chooses you when you have nothing left to offer. And on Christmas Eve, when I thought my story was over, a barefoot woman proved it was just beginning. Thank you for listening. If this story gave you hope or reminded you of your worth, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'll be reading them